Anei tō tātou haerenga.
Around 5,000 people die each year in Aotearoa, New Zealand from smoking-related illness.
A cigarette's a stick with tobacco in it, and you light it, you smoke it, but it has such a huge impact on our lives in terms of health.
You could smoke in the hospital, you could smoke in the hospital room, you could smoke on the plane, you could smoke everywhere, not knowing that there was anything harmful about tobacco. Why would there be?
Māori women were at one stage the highest smokers in the world.
None of my brothers ever reached 60.
Thousands of our whānau die every year, and this is the number one cause of preventable death in Aotearoa.
Kia ora mai no rā tātou. My name's Hone Harawira.
O Manadu wā.
Ko Sky Kemura tōku ingoa.
Shane Kawanah Ribrook tōku ingoa.
Ko Sue Taylor tōku ingoa.
Ko Faye Selby Law tōku ingoa.
Kia ora Jabanadina hau.
Ko Mary Wilson tuala whata hau.
Ko Catherine Manning tōku ingoa.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Shirley Ann Brown is my name.
Even to this day, people just look at me and go, oh, you know, she's a smoking lady.
My why is for our people, for my whānau, for my children, for my future mokopuna.
It's not about us. It's the health and well-being of our future generations.
Don't underestimate the power that we have had in the world of tobacco control. It's been massive. Keeping in mind that our people were always tobacco-free, Tupeka Kore, so we never had that in our kōrero. You'll never find it until certain people turned up on deck. So that was the first time we encountered tobacco was with Cook. And the kōrero goes that when a rangatira saw the smoke coming from his head, he thought, is this guy a atua? In his concern, he threw water over his head to extinguish the smoke.
And they didn't know what it was. And so the ideology behind it was like, you know, he mea tapu tēnei, you know, like me mahia. That was what they wanted to do.
Cook landed on our shores and he brought with him beads, blankets and tobacco and alcohol. And tobacco was one of those gifts or koha that they decided was so valuable that they were going to package it up and give it to our people.
And it was seen as a commodity of some value by our people. And you can see the value it was held in, because by 1840, when the treaty was signed, that was one of those products that was used as part of that signature. Tobacco's been there a long time, but it was not a tradition for our people.
Māori culture was romanticised by the early painters and photographers, who often placed pipes in the hands of their subjects for the sake of art. These images went on to sell the idea that there was some sort of mana attached to smoking.
One of the things about us as Māori is the use of tobacco demonstrates the evenness of us as a people. So both men and women took up smoking in Māoridom, whereas in many cultures they didn't, only the men were allowed to smoke.
The New Zealand Māori Council realised the impact that this koha was having. They tried to get a law to make it illegal to smoke. Well, that was fought against.
You know, this is where the Whakapapa comes in. So the YMP, back in the day, they had already worked out that it was a ngangara in our midst. There are haka written by our tupuna about waking up and not being deaf to the power of tobacco.
By then, it was too late. People were hooked.
In 1964, this is where the first so-called solid evidence came to say that there was a causal link between smoking and cancer. So 61 years ago, it's not news. I suspect we'll see it again with vaping.
We have to stop it. It is killing our people.
Look, you come from a fine line of resistance in cessation, in advocacy, in research, in health promotion.
This history of resistance and fighting for sovereignty and fighting for health, I think that's really important to understand what it's taken to get to this particular point.
My introduction to this kaupapa was through this queer whaia Nāniko Manhinik and Tahuna Manhinik and the Manhiniks from Ngāti Tiata.
Kia ora, ko Peritania Manhinik tōku ingoa no Ngāti Tiata Hau.
Tana tuakana, oi mata, he ori te.
Ko e atua.
And I remember those days about our kaumātua, you know, having the smoke on the Paipa in the kitchen. To change that culture was a big thing. You know, it wasn't going to happen overnight, but it had to happen, and there needed to be some leadership in it.
For my experience with tea was even as a young kid, 7, 8, and he would have been 17, that's when I believe his marae health journey started, was because of his visit over there to the Urupa, when all his cousins and aunties and uncles were dying of such a young age. He wanted to turn that around, went, this needs to change.
And what he totally understood at that time was that the marae was the centre place of our culture. And what you did at the marae became part of who you were, your culture.
And he always said, we need to stop smoking on the marae.
I think not everybody was happy about it, especially the smokers, right? You know, nobody's happy about it. But there was the tikanga. We had established new tikanga. What we practice now is what our culture will be in the future. In 1991, Mum went round and put a whole lot of tikanga together. And so Auahi Kore, whai marae, became a tikanga o Ngāti Tiata.
And she went from marae to marae, and she informed them, your marae is now Auahi Kore. It stopped people in their tracks because they said, wow, we've got to have a hui with the community, we've got to talk about this, there's got to be a strategic plan, what's our position statement, we've got to write a policy document. And she said, no, your marae is now Auahi Kore. I'll bring you aside next week and you'll work it out because that's how it is.
The beauty of kaitiaki is that it applies to everything. Kawa had been said, tikanga followed. This is the tikanga now.
Sometimes you just need to set the tikanga. And that's exactly what she did.
Leading up to that, and even after that, once we had actually got become smoke-free, that didn't mean that everybody was smoke-free.
This whole thing around smoking cessation, it didn't start in New Zealand. It actually started at a conference, I think the 10th World Conference in Beijing. And some Pākehā woman in the audience stood up and said, isn't it terrible? Māori women have got the highest lung cancer rate. What are we going to do about it?
Ko Sula Taylor tōku ingoa, no Ngāti Raukawa ki te tonga, me Ngāti Kahununu ki Wararapa Hau, no reira, tēnā koutou katoa. I became involved with basically setting up 7 Māori providers in regards to how they were going to help their whānau and their communities stop smoking.
But first of all, it was actually targeted at hapu mama. We had NRT, or nicotine replacement therapy, and so we were to offer this free program. And I worked for Te Hutu Manua Māori, and I got bloody set up. We were in this room and there was these stroppy Māori women at the back, like Amelia, Rebeti, Riripete Haretuku. And, you know, I was doing this presentation and after they come up, they, who the hell do you think you are? Trying to bloody put this NRT, never been tried on any woman in the world, but they wanted to try it on our Māori woman. And I thought, oh, who the hell are they? And so when I found out who they were, I thought, oh no, I'm not going to get into a scrap with those wahine.
And then I went back to the funders and just said, look, this is not going to work.
We're not going to target hapu women, we're going to target Māori women and their whānau.
I wanted to do something to help our people, right? It was a really exciting opportunity. We embraced it, but the steps that we all needed to take, it was like venturing, you know, to the stars, because, you know, no one had done it There were no educators. We didn't know much about smoking cessation, could coach, none of that. We didn't have any of that.
And really the focus was more whānau ora orientated. They were looking at what were the other drivers, what were the other stresses that were driving whānau to actually pick up a cigarette.
So when the pilot finished in 2001, and they realised 6 months before that this program is working, it's a success.
The resources when we first started delivering, when it was first funded, we had access to all the resources. We weren't really wanting for anything.
I started my training in aukati in 1999 with Hauora Mataraka in Otautahi, Christchurch. I love the fact that it was kaupapa Māori. It was a 24/7 program. Our whānau could just reach out and say, cousin, I need some patches, I need some gum. And they loved the fact that there was a product out there to support them to become smoke-free.
We go to the homes or wherever they felt comfortable. We would talk with them, share their journey. We don't tell them what to do, it's their journey. We just support them with some ideas that could help them.
I found it was very interesting because I loved going out and helping our whānau out in the community. My best achievement was getting them to quit.
That is what the journey is about, It's a lot of hard work, but when they do quit, it just makes you over the moon, They're happy that they've reached that, but it makes us happy that we have helped them reach what they want, their goal, to reach their goal.
They were really, really exciting times, It was like a big whānau. Yeah.
Ko whai Selby Lord tōku ingoa, no Ngāti Parau me Ngāti Raukaua ki te tonga ahau, engari e noho ana au ki te papai oia, te rohi o rangitāne ki Manua tū. I looked after a team called Te Ohu Auhi Motunga, which was based in the mid-central region, and we were a really lucky team because the process that we used was a whānau water-based process. And then I came across Te Hāpai Te Hauora in the city prevention role. And that relationship, particularly for wahine Māori, but for anyone in the whānau smoking around a pregnant woman or in pregnancy, has an impact on sūri.
When I went to a training with OKP, they talked about what the damage that the smoke did to the children. And my son was a chronic asthmatic. And when I left that training, I went to see my manager, Sharon Reid, and I was crying, I said, because I did that to my son. He's a chronic asthmatic, and I blamed myself for it. And that's why this journey is very, very important, that I help mothers with the other children, because my smoking, I believe, causes asthma to be chronic.
We were getting something like, I think, 50-something% of people that were on that program quitting. But they didn't quit with the NRT. They quit because the kaimahi come into their whare, sat down beside them, listened to them, had a cup of tea. What else can we do for you besides giving up smoking?
For me, Aukati Kai Paipa was a good program. First it started off as a 12-month program, then it went down to a 9-month, then it went down to a 6-month, then it went down to a 3-month program. And then in 2016, that's when Aukati Kai Paipa was disabled and we had to think of another name for our stop smoking service. But the problem with that, our program was only a 6-week program.
In 2011, Tūhinga Māori lost the contract and the Aukati Kai Paipa training changed from by Māori for Māori to a generic non-Māori for Māori. And in 2015, recommendations by the non-Māori advisory of the Ministry of Health resulted in the alignment of all tobacco control contracts and services in Aotearoa. And by 2016, all Aukati Kai Paipa programs stopped.
Yeah, hard hell. Why did they do that? Why do they do things like that when things are successful, right? Why do they do things like that?
I'm a researcher, so did my PhD in tobacco control. And why I did that was, I just think in terms of Māori health, it is the most important issue that we face in terms of well-being into the future.
Kia ora, heuri hau no Ngāti Hine, ko Ngāti Te Tarawa me Te Orawai o Hapu, engari e noho ana ki te whanganui a tāra o tēnei wā, so I'm anaru wā. I started off in the field, I'd just come into public health, and I was at a research unit in Tamaki Makaurau called Whāriki, and that was around 97, and there was a lot happening then. Te Otu Manua Māori had already launched the Auahi Kore kaupapa, and then around the same time an organisation called the Health Sponsorship Council launched the Auahi Kore social marketing brand.
What I do is qualitative research. So what that means for me is allowing people to tell their stories. People can talk about their stories using their words and sharing their experiences about how tobacco has impacted their lives. And I think the importance of that work is that we get to elevate voices that would otherwise go unheard. And you can't overlook that when you're trying to implement solutions.
There was a hui at Waenui o Mata in down in Pōneke, and it was a hui to establish the Māori Smoke Free Coalition, originally called Āpārangi Tautoko Auahi Kore, later became Te Reo Mārama.
Shane Kawanata Bradbrook toko ingo no tai rāwhiti, tā manuhiri rongo whakaata kahununu aku iwi. I have worked in tobacco control, Tupeka Kore, for about 22 plus years.
Ko Sky Kimura tōku ingoa, he uru no Ngāti Tuwhareto, Ngāti Whakaupapa, Taranaki, Te Atiawa, Ngāti Maniapoto, Ngāti Raukawa. So I took on a national role working alongside Shane Bradbrook. He had rebranded Āpārangi Tautoko Auahi Kore, which is a tack to Te Reo Mārama.
So dealing with politicians, trying to alter the course of tobacco control history, really.
As a researcher, I was involved with that, and I kind of ended up on board. I was the proxy rep for Northland with my colleague who's now passed, and I really mihi out to her and her whānau, Maisie Taylor, so I was her proxy rep.
And also worked internationally, development of the world's first public health treaty under the UN, so worked on the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which also included clauses with Indigenous peoples.
At that time there was a national government with a Māori coalition, Māori Party coalition, so there was extra funding there for a Māori voice. So we saw an influx of health promoters, Māori health promoters, but not just in Auahi Kore, for most health inequities that were impacting Māori communities at that time. So alcohol, tobacco, sugar, physical activities. We saw a lot of national programs being developed. Therefore, DHBs, regional DHBs, were sort of encouraged to invest in the region.
The magic in particular for Māori public health, is turning up. You know, you turn up every day. You turn up into communities every day, not just because you want something from a community. You turn up, you ask what do you need, you give, and then at some point there's a reciprocal relationship. Kia ora Anjibana, ngā ria hau o Ngāti Kanohi. So my born and bred in Hawke's Bay. My whānau is from Whangara. I came in early 2000s in the Hawke's Bay DHB Public Health Unit. I was the Auahi Kore health promoter. So Hawke's Bay, we were probably one of the first, we were the first region to have all of our councils go smoke-free Auahi Kore. So we had joint signage and support from Kahununu across all of those councils. So Kahununu spearheaded a lot of that, and that was very much around Kahununu and for the well-being of their people.
Kia ora, my name's Hannah Linden and I'm the Green Party spokesperson on health. I'm a MP based in Taitokero and entered into smoke-free and tobacco control in the early 2000s. I was that guy in the schools with the hari doll singing Auahi Kore smoke-free, Auahi Kore, that's me, supporting both smoke-free environments but also our mothers and whānau to access quit support.
They realised that maybe I was a really good fit for the smoke-free coordinator's role that they had going for public health. Because I am a well-versed Ngāti Tūkореhe woman, the first thing I did was contact via Sue Taylor and Teresa Taylor, because I knew they were working in this kaupapa, because I had to understand for me the whakapapa of what I was going to be walking into. I wasn't going to be sitting there going, well, this is what public health says. Tell me our story. Tell me what it is.
We had huge leadership in Māori tobacco control, and it didn't just sit in a national space, it sat across the country, right out in public health units. You know, there wasn't a them and us, it was us. And that's what leadership looks like. I was really fortunate again to have another lifelong friend, Steve Kenny, who took the regional coordinator's role. So I met him early 2000s when he took over from Kristen. And when we talk about not only being about the kaupapa, you have to believe in it. And so Stephen, his role, every role that he had, he was at Cancer Society. He led with Auwahi Kore. He went into council. He led with Auwahi Kore. You know, he was all about making a difference for our people. And yeah, he did that every day.
I remember a lot of the talk that was happening then as well around the fear of not being able to smoke in a bar, like people aren't going to come to the bars. And it just wasn't true. There was that fear and there was those lies that were thrown out because they just didn't want to get rid of this product. But because our rangatira in this space fought and they knew what was right and made that happen for our people, that was removed, we'd no longer see that. You know, my children couldn't dream what it would look like with people to smoke inside.
Like I used to go into people's homes, right, and I knew that they weren't smokers. I never even used to ask them. I would just say, oh, have you got an ashtray? And they would say, oh no, we don't smoke. Oh, will a saucer do? Yes, please, I'd say. And I'd sit there and smoke in their house. What the hell? You know, and the fact that we don't do that anymore. We've made such amazing progress.
So this is the OG smoke-free Auwahi Kore drink bottle, and this is a famous product that most people will recognise because it was so distinctive and it was such a good reminder and such a good trigger, a marketing tool. It's funny seeing it again and just going, wow, you know, we did that thing, we did that. HSC is the Health Sponsorship Council, and I worked for them as the Auwahi Kore National Manager. The council was set up to replace the sponsorship that was in New Zealand by the tobacco companies. So Benson Hedges Fashion became Smoke-Free Fashion, Rothmans Rally of New Zealand became the Smoke-Free Rally of New Zealand, sports teams like Smoke-Free PIC, and if you think about other big brands, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, they all use their brand effectively, they will put it everywhere so everybody knows it. So when you see a smoke-free logo, you know what that means. So that's where it becomes important to go, how do we build a sustaining message and kaupapa that lives with you because you're Māori and because the message is Māori. So it became really important to include that Māori design flair. And we were really lucky that Jamie Boynton was already working with Trevor, and then Rena and Tai Kirikiri did a whole lot to advance the kaupapa and our thinking of how Auwahi Kore connects to te ao Māori and that whakapapa to Ngā Atua. So if you go back to the logo, the green swirl of Papatuanuku and the blue swirl of Ranginui and the fresh air that was created between by their children, and you think about those atua, that is the whakapapa of Auwahi Kore, that is the whakapapa of Māori, that we are an Auwahi Kore people. We are a Tupeka Kore people. Everywhere that we could, we were selling this brand to have a behaviour change, to move from being smokers to move to being smoke-free whānau.
You know, we used to have our own social media. So the very first program that it's about whānau, which people still reference even today, the money was given over to us. It was produced in-house by our own people, used our own celebrity, and then we pumped it out there. It had a massive impact, both in the Māori community and non-Māori, because it was all about whānau and it focused in on looking after our people. It was by Māori for Māori.
Matariki back then wasn't a thing. And Trevor worked really hard to build a narrative that actually matariki for the country is something that we can do. Matariki is the Māori New Year. It is the time for new goals. It is the time of reflection, and it lined up perfectly with quitting smoking and becoming Auwahi Kore.
I'll be honest, I felt like we were at the peak of what we were, you know, how we were doing things. We were being funded accordingly, and we saw mad respect for Māori tobacco control advocacy and promotion and cessation providership. Prioritisation in terms of the funding was pretty high at that time.
The people that were involved with that and advocacy around the country were people like Shane Bradbrook, Anaru Wā, Trevor Shaler, Moana Maniapoto, Sky Kimura. We became very militant.
What was also really important was that we had key allies and key partners in other spaces and places who weren't Māori. So, you know, having critical friends and partners that are Māori and that are non-Māori for the same kaupapa made a massive difference.
We actually had national strategies. It wasn't a let's guess where we're going next.
But what we really wanted the government to do was actually talk about the industry and exposing industry when no one's wanted to go there. In fact, not one government has gone there.
Māori Tobacco Control took the bold step towards Tupeka Kore, a tobacco-free Aotearoa.
It was a real good wake-up call because as long as we said we were on this slow burn game of getting tobacco over the long term and we're not thinking about getting rid of it, that was how it was going to be. And then changing the songbook and saying we're going to get rid of tobacco was a real turning point in the kaupapa.
What does Tupeka Kore mean? Because not everybody thinks like that. Some people think harm minimisation, some people think, you know, personal rights, you know, we don't want a nanny state. For me, is get the shit out, you know, basically. We don't do it. We don't need it.
That's when we started sharpening up our act, right? We had these quite clever approaches to health promotion. We're an endangered species, endangered by who? The tobacco industry. Let's get rid of tobacco, join the resistance movement. You know, these are hard hitting. They support our people. They attack the industry. They talk about it as being legalised genocide. And then of course, Māori Killers was our last campaign. And you can see some of those Māori Killer cigarette boxes out there in the main hall. And it was true, they used to get stolen all the time. Every time you put them down, they're gone. Mainly because they thought they were real cigarettes, I have to say, for some of them. And then they were highly disappointed when they opened up and there was all of this health promotion stuff in there. Katoa. And we launched it and said, we're the Māori Killers Tobacco Company. And the look on people's faces, we had people walk out who were appalled that we were getting into this business of tobacco. Of course, it was just the farce.
Being in that room and knowing what was going on and knowing other people in that room didn't know what was going on and having them sit there very uncomfortable and then just walking out in outrage at this product that was being launched with this name. It was a really impactful event to say, yeah, but that's what's being sold every day. The packaging just looks different.
We might as well own the company to kill our own people. That's how brutal we were talking.
You know, the term big tobacco was really quite an Americanised way of looking at it. But I think in tobacco industry interference here in Aotearoa is so very real.
The thing that happens about lobbying when you are very wealthy and you have huge amounts of power and huge amounts of resource at your beck and call is very dangerous. And that's not us, that's the tobacco industry, obviously.
For us as Māori, legislation has been the taniwha, but we need legislation to get rid of the industry. They are the taniwha, not tobacco, not vaping, it's the industry.
Probably the thing that was critical was pulling together the Māori Affairs Select Committee and the inquiry on the tobacco industry, which led to Smoke Free 2025.
At that time, Hone Harewere was the MP for Taitokerau. And, you know, he was forced to be reckoned with in terms of tobacco control leadership. He really led the process into the Māori Affairs Select Committee inquiry, which will be hands down one of the most historical events in tobacco control in the world, not just in this country, in the world for Indigenous populations.
Kia ora mai no rā tātou. My name's Hone Harewere. I never really knew what to do until I got to Parliament, actually. And then I wanted to introduce a tobacco out of Aotearoa bill, toa. Unfortunately, that died an early death. So with the Māori Party, I took the issue to the Health Select Committee about trying to, you know, stop smoking in the country, get rid of tobacco. Funny thing was, is the Health Select Committee, they looked at me like I was a Martian. And without blinking, they said, no, we've got many more important things to do. That didn't work, so I came back and I had a long talk to Tariana, as it happened. I said, so this is what I'm proposing. to change it from a health issue to the impact of tobacco on Māori. By doing it that way, I can pull it away from the Health Select Committee and put it into the Māori Affairs Select Committee that I was a member of.
At that time, Tuhinga was the chair of the Māori Affairs Select Committee, and those two, like, they were whānau. They just couldn't see eye to eye. And one of the things that he did, which was pretty, and which I think is politically outstanding, is he shared the chair role with Hone, and they both co-chaired throughout the whole Māori Affairs Select Committee process.
You know, they talk about select committees having hearings and all that down in Wellington. I said, no. Organise so that we were able to travel around the country, take it around the country, worked really hard with a small group of dedicated, anti-tobacco activists, Sky Kimura, Shane Bradbrook, Mere, oh God, you're going to kill me, and Sue Taylor. Love you, Mere Wilson, and Sue Taylor, and others, of course. And I work with them about trying to get all of the anti-smoking groups all around the country to come along and present at the Select Committee.
With Dame Tariana, but like even Steve Chadwick, and then Hone Harawira, that guy. You had real leaders and there was a real momentum in the kaupapa.
The iwi and the hapu and the whānau that came to those Māori Affairs Select Committee was just phenomenal.
Well, that felt like, when the Beatles first started, I would imagine, you knew you were at the forefront of global change, of political change.
Even though it was a Māori-focused inquiry, of course it had a massive impact right across the whole country. Pākehā were engaged as well, because it's had such a massive impact on people's lives.
My mum had breast cancer and passed when I was 12, and so the kōrero that we gave around that was we were orphaned by the tobacco industry. She died from a product that was legally sold here. And she smoked, I can tell you, poor more menthol. Smoked in the home, light a cigarette either on the toaster or on the oven. We'd light it on there for her as well. We'd go to the dairy. We were able to go buy cigarettes down at the dairy. That's my generation. I have 4 siblings. She has sisters, she has brothers, she has cousins, she's had nephews. So it's a huge loss.
By the time we'd finished our hearings and our last ones, we were in Wellington. By the time that happened, the Select Committee was, strongly behind the kaupapa of doing something to stop tobacco because of its impact on Māori.
Here I was reflecting back to the days where we were in the smoke-filled wharekai and where our people were dying in droves, to where now, hold on a minute, the people who were selling this stuff, they were going to be asking some very quite direct questions as to what this product was doing to my people.
There's this prolific quote from the tobacco industry, we don't smoke this shit. We leave this for the dumb, the poor, the black and the stupid.
That's a quote attributed to a tobacco company executive. Was it from one of your company executives?
No, not that I'm aware of, and I think it's
Is it a philosophy that your company follows?
No, absolutely not.
Do you accept any responsibility, your company, or you personally?
Obviously, any loss, any illness is upsetting, and I, like most people, I've lost 2 grandparents to smoking-related
Do you
diseases.
smoke yourself?
No, I do not.
Why not? Because it's harmful?
Yes, because it's harmful, and I don't like it.
Thank you very much.
It was just awe-inspiring. I listened to submitter after submitter talk about the impact that it had. People like Dr. Nikki Jackson, who was with Public Health, and she did the most impassionate submission on behalf of Public Health and what it did to our people.
The really defining moment was, Toe was out for the day, so I was the chair for the day. And we had these people who were going to come and speak, and there was this old chap who I said, well, what's happening with him? He said, oh, he's not due to come up until this afternoon. And he was sitting there with a box. So I tell those fellas to wait, get that old fella up here. So he came up, this old Māori guy. He started talking, and then he opened this box, and he took out his heart. The whole place goes, what? And of course, not only were these other people who were waiting, there's also people from the tobacco industry at the back, and you could see them just drop through the floor, eh? And this old man, and then I asked them to pass it around the select committee.
Hone was the showman, might surprise you, but he kept the heart, and because he wanted the heart to hold it, because the next submitters were British American Tobacco. And he asked them pointedly, did you cause this? Are you responsible, accountable for this? And they didn't know where to hide.
It is a strange feeling to hold someone's heart in your hands, even in a plastic bag. But what a privilege for him to share that with us in that room on that day, to tell his story of how tobacco had impacted his life. It makes me teary thinking about it.
By the time that particular hearing was over, was a done deal. When Tariana finally got around to developing a bill, because she was the minister, I wasn't the minister, she was the minister, and she put that in the House, it just went through spectacularly. And people from all parties, some in tears, who got up to speak about the importance of it. So, yeah, that was huge.
The inquiry outlined 42 recommendations to remove tobacco from our country's future in order to preserve Māori culture for younger generations.
Because of this, the government set a goal of smoke-free Aotearoa 2025.
Everything that you see over the last probably 15 years, anything from
supply reduction,
tax,
plain packaging,
removal of displays,
smoke-free environments, smoke-free cars.
Everything in those was all part of that inquiry. We brought them out of the shadows, out of the dark, hidden away, exposed them to the light, and we did that. We did that as Māori. But look at the impact it's had on all New Zealanders.
So, we got it across the line. And it wasn't just about Māori, it was like, if we can get this right for Māori, we can get it right for everybody. And I still stand by that line to this day.
We saw it as part of our Article 2 responsibility. We saw the industry and its product has been an impediment to our Māori development aspirations.
I think in the days when we were doing land marches and Dame Whina Cooper, so, not one more inch of land are they going to take. And I think that's the same, not one more life should these tobacco industry be taken of our people, not one more.
And everyone was looking at us and saying, whoa, you guys are amazing. Smoke-free generations.
Soon after we announced Smoke-Free 2025, countries like Denmark announced that they were going to do it. You've just recently had the impact of the UK announcing that they want to go there as well. Where did that come from? It came from us. Us. And for Māori, we should be quite aware that we have had that impact globally.
Unfortunately for us with Te Reo Mārama, because of our militant style of doing the mahi out in the community, the funder was not happy with what we were doing. I think one of the comments was we were too far ahead of ourselves. And in 2010, Te Reo Mārama lost their contract. We'd had it for 12 years. Basically it was like, stop targeting the industry, you need to actually get people to quit smoking. But we knew that the only way we could get people to stop smoking was actually get rid of the industry.
But again, I want to mihi to Shane, because as our director, he was targeted all the time.
Definitely phone hacking, computer hacking, times where you'd go into your office and realise someone had been in your office.
His car broken into, our offices broken into. Then we ended up in a book.
It was about how big tobacco influenced politicians, particularly Cameron Slater, who was known as Whale Oil, had a column going. Yeah, he was just scathing of some of the things that we were actually doing.
You think public health, wouldn't cause that sort of attention, but it does. Yes, there are prices that you pay. For me personally, that cost was mental health breakdown because we were trying to take the industry to court. We won a defamation case against people that worked on behalf of the industry. You getting shot down every time in the media because you're told by certain members in a certain right-wing group that you are a terrorist, that you have embezzled money, that you're a fraudster, etc., etc., etc. There's a cost to that, and my head just went other places for about 2 years after the case. That's the dark side of what you do when you're fighting these sort of people. They've got a lot of money, and that's who we're going up against.
The ability of Māori leadership to influence and participate in tobacco control was severely eroded in the decade that followed.
The government instead focused on contract-driven, individualistic smoking cessation interventions.
We started to see some changes in terms of, aukati Paipa got stopped getting funding. Te Hītori Māori was shut down in terms of the Whakapapa contracts. We started to see Whakapapa health promoters be sort of just, made into more generic health promoters. Well, I believe there was industry interference within that political landscape because what was happening was just so drastic.
The government came along and said, no, we want to do it a different way. But when you looked at all the contracts that they awarded, the money, there was so much more money taken out of the contracts. But there was lots of expectations to do more with less.
Once you lose that kind of resource, you lose the whakapapa to that resource. When you get rid of that workforce, nobody knows you. You try and replace it, you can't replicate it because actually the service is those people.
Everyone deserves the right to a service, but we need to still not take our eye off the ball that our priority group are Māori. We have the highest smoking rates. We die at a younger age.
I'd think about go back to who are my audiences, because actually then if I've got less funding I need to be more focused. I need to be more focused on who the key audience is, who is in most need, who is at most risk, who is receiving most harm, and focus on them. Because actually they are the ones that need the help most, they are the ones we need to connect with to help shift their behaviours. Part of the mahi we did at Regional Public Health was looking at we did an evaluation of the aukati kaupapa service, brilliant. It's an amazing service. And probably a year later in the review we lost aukati. We lost Te Hoti Manawa Māori, the lead trainer. So we lost a lot of services as part of that review.
And whether it's their advisors, whoever they may be, are not Māori and therefore can never understand why we do what we do. It's hard to design a service around a value system that doesn't belong to you, so they design their own for people that are not them.
Really it's the communities that have helped us through the last decade, because when we had a government that wasn't committed to it, the communities were holding the kaupapa and holding their local people to account.
Why is community important?
Because that's the end result, isn't it? We often do two, or we design a program that's designed without their thought of reality. And we go after 5 years ago, oh, that didn't work. Our people know what is best for them. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko parihaka te maunga hātia te awa pehi aori te marae, nā te hau te hapu, nā pui te iwi, Shirley Ann Brown is my name, and my role here is I'm a believer. If we allow them to hold the pen and to facilitate and be the informant of practice, mate, we would be far better off.
I feel in a privileged position to be able to work with our community directly to see what does health promotion, what does smoke-free look like when it's led by our people.
By Māori, for Māori, to Māori is the actual goal, our own tino oranga tiratanga, our mana Motuhake. So there's a big groundswell around different groups all coming together, because we should be able to determine for ourselves what that means, what that looks like going forward. So whether it's tackling smoking, whether it's tackling vaping, there's a real groundswell already that we can leverage off of our iwi, whānau, hapu, all coming together as one to make some change for everyone.
And I love the whole kōrero, get it right for Māori and all benefit. So I'm a firm believer that if we give our communities the opportunity and the authority to reclaim what they know works for them and what matters to them, we can see magic happening in our community.
So when I think about the hashtags, they are the tamariki mokapuna voice that we are wanting today, you know. They're just fast, so much energy, too much pizza, far too much pizza.
In 2011, the Dominion Post reported that people smoking in cars carrying children was 11 times higher in Wainuiomata than in Karori.
And, you know, that didn't go down too well in Wainuiomata. Oh, a lot of it was questioned like, well, how do they know? And how they know is they had people, you know, on either side of Wainuiomata Hill just counting how many people they saw in their cars smoking and while carrying children.
So there was a bit of pushback, and then many people would know in Wainuiomata, if you want anything done, it's Leah Clark. So Leah was like, well, what do we do about this, you know? What can we do? So, you know, part of that was, I guess, the growth and the birth of the hashtags.
Those rangatahi were able to actually articulate how that, you know, impacted them. It's all about right now, right here for rangatahi. I feel like this, I don't like that, you know.
Smoke-free cars sort of birthed out in that community, and the kids were just on fire. They were doing local talks, they were having to do submissions. We were on haerenga all the time going into Parliament.
When I came on board with the hashtags, we were just in the second wave, heading into the third wave. So recruiting more rangatahi that wanted to voice their opinions about what was going on in their community.
We are the third wave of hashtags. I am Rihanna Leafapaki.
I'm Hanova Moni. We went to Parliament and we did some oral submissions. We were pushing the smoke-free cars legislation.
I was a bit nervous talking in front of all of them since they're higher up in the Parliament.
I really wanted to get our point across and push the kaupapa, so when we got in there, the nerves kind of went away.
Kia ora, my name is Rihanna Leafapaki. Children have been sitting in cars, breathing in secondhand smoke for too long.
Yeah, my heart dropped because there was so much people there, but at the same time just got into a zone and yeah, just did my own thing.
And this one time that we went into council with them, the kids were amazing. They just stood up and said, well, you didn't listen to me the first time, and so I'm back again.
We felt like we weren't being heard since we had to keep continuously going back and pushing the same thing to be done.
One of our biggest supporters within our community was the Wainuiomata Rugby League Club, especially in, you know, promoting smoke-free spaces, smoke-free sidelines. They were behind it 100%. I'd like to say 150% actually.
Some of the things we did was we went around the sidelines of rugby games and we had a petition. I think they were surprised. I didn't think a lot of them realised how much of an effect that had on us.
So your whānau that's connected to the marae, that's connected to the other sports clubs that are going on, that are connected to kōhanga, kura, everybody. That's pretty much how the kumara vine works in Wainuiomata. Yeah, you just tell one person, they tell everybody.
Tupuya Morgan, CC was another one who was in there supporting them, also with Kōkiri Marae.
We were really fortunate to have full support from Dame Tariana Turia and Parekura Poromea, who were, you know, sitting at that level, but always came back to community level, back to the rangatahi, and really showing the importance of community voices. They were magic. But also all the local businesses that supported, yeah, I just couldn't think of a better community actually that would have kicked that off.
After 11 years of hard work, New Zealand law was amended to ban smoking and vaping in cars with children under 18.
I've heard lots of discussion around Dame Tariana Turia, and I have the same admiration as I talked about previous queer Dame Naneko Minhinik, via Donna Richards, and that I watched this queer as she apologised to these tamariki were taking 10 years to introduce the smoke-free car law that should have been introduced when they first made a commitment to the government's goal of 2025. And I thought that is the most humble thing I've seen in all my years, because for a queer of her status to talk to our taumariki and say, and tell them I should have done better by you, that's a very fearless and brave thing to do, I thought. The legacy of her work lives on today.
I guess the biggest thing for me, though, is I never ever thought in my lifetime that part of the end goal of 2025 would be to introduce vaping. Yes, so they might be able to say in 2025 there are less people smoking, but how many more people are vaping? And that for me is the real sad part of all of this. Swapping one for another, you know. Yeah.
And while I'm at it, that fucking vaping as well. Make that fucking thing go at the same time.
There are more young people vaping in this country than there'd ever be smoking that I've ever seen.
And while everybody says, oh, it's harmless, bullshit, it's harmless. The same chemicals, more levels of nicotine are pumped into our kids through vapes than were ever done through cigarettes.
Schools and principals are having to put in place rules around vaping. It's ridiculous. Like, why have we put schools in that position? Why have we put whānau in that position?
All the rangatahi were talking about vaping and what the next move for them was going to be on how to discourage that. So there they go, the hashtags are at it again.
Just recently I was in a hui, I was actually in Australia with some Aboriginal rangatahi, and he said the industry's always got a next. And so when you get rid of smoking, the next is vaping. But the trade-off is huge vaping rates among our rangatahi, and recent research has said that actually our rangatahi have some of the highest vaping rates on the planet.
So vaping has just opened up another income stream for the same people that were causing harm for Māori.
There's money to be made in the industries and they're trying to make it.
The values that business has versus the values that come from Indigenous culture, they don't even begin to be in the same world. You know, because one is about profitability and one is about protecting the whakapapa. What was unique is they'd set this commitment in place for these 42 recommendations for the government. They set the goals. I think 2017, 2019, we asked for an update, an audit from the Māori Affairs Select Committee, and we went along and all they could tell us is they'd achieved 3 things out of 42. What does that tell you? No government from 2011 till 2023 ever had a plan. Dr. Aisha Varel, she was the only one to do a plan, and even her plan only had 3. Some of us asked what happens to the rest of it, and I'm still waiting for an answer.
And so people were really disheartened. You know, we had gone from this being able to share our story, feeling connected, to not only the people that we told the story to, but to the system.
You know, I wondered where they got the end date from, 2025. Where did they have a bloody secret looking glass or something that said actually by this date people will be smoke free, right? Didn't make sense to me. Given the statistics that we still had, in terms of people smoking.
It's a government goal of 2025 smoke-free Aotearoa. And this is important too. The government commitment was less than 5% prevalence rate. And why I say that's important, because people thought that New Zealand was going to be smoke-free. And again, for that little girl in Kuku who always asks the why, my one is, so what happens to those 5% you've left behind? Are you okay with them dying? Now, the community always had a plan. We've got some highly skilled academics that exist in this country who are well respected globally, and they went to the government and successive governments, so let's not get caught up on this government, it's successive government, and said, well, we've done our research and this is what looks good. This is what would be best fit for this country, never got accepted. Rather than go back to why Dame Tariana, Hone and the Māori Affairs Select Committee originally set up this inquiry, which was too many of our people were dying from smoking related illnesses. It was killing people. I'm worried about who decides what is better for us.
Probably right from the signing of the tiriti that we've actually thought we had a partnership, thought that we had a voice, but we know that that actually hasn't happened. You know, we are a partner when they want us to be a partner. You know, oh, there's a Māori over there, we'll get them to do the karakia. So for us, any pushback that we're going to get that looks like it's going to harm particularly our future generations, we are going to speak out. We're not going to sit there and say, well, you're just a good Māori. I mean, we want a better life for not just Māori, for everyone.
You know, we're on target to get under 5% by Christmas 25. Well, New Zealanders generally 3%, but Māori down from the 30s and the 40s down to 7%. And all we needed to do then was keep pushing those things within Māori circles until we were below 5% as well. That would have been huge. That would have been huge.
Was there any moment that really surprised you in the whole process?
Well, the fucking repeal did. And I'm going to say that because that's what it was.
In 2022, 3 key laws had been introduced to help achieve the smoke-free goal: lowering nicotine levels in tobacco products, reducing the number of retailers selling tobacco, and introducing the smoke-free generation, where anyone born after 2009 will never legally be able to buy cigarettes.
Now, what's happened now, they've repealed that legislation.
Both Māori and non-Māori hit the streets across the country today protesting plans by the government to repeal the smoke-free laws. A petition with almost 50,000 signatures was handed over in the capital.
You know, an overnight shift in policy where all of that hard work felt like it was totally being undone.
Seems to be the same mantra. It's all about wealth, it's not about health.
Part of our action was to put in a Waitangi claim. We put it under urgency. The government pushed through to repeal before that hearing was held. We're still waiting for a hearing date. And it's not like you're going to win anything, right? Like, we will go, yes, it was against another breach of the treaty, no surprises there, and then so what? But the so what is that we put our po in the ground and we fight these fights. If we don't do it, then we're just rolling over.
It's relatively extraordinary in my view that this government is pushing so many repeals or changes to law or new pieces of law through under urgency. There was no consultation or engagement with these Māori groups, and there's no clear or convincing rationale for the change that I've been able to see.
Removing the smoke-free generation means that we have got a group of young people that could have never been exposed to a product, and now they will be open to the marketing, to the product, and never have that opportunity to be a solely smoke-free generation. And that's sad. Yeah.
The industry is back, full-blown. We've got tobacco lobbyists, literally in swearing-in ceremonies. You are seeing direct lobbying straight into government. A lot of it is, under international conventions, is illegal. It's just been ignored.
And whether the people like it or not, the industry won the election last year. The industry, the sugar industry, the tobacco industry, the alcohol industry, the forestry industry, the mining industry. Like, we've just got to be really real about this.
We've got Shane Jones. He's got his mate Uppy Dawson right alongside him. So that's how far In a very quick time, the lobbyists have got in. You had people like Nicola Willis saying that basically we're going to give up our young generation to get our tax take. It's appalling. That hit the fan overseas. People were shocked that we were going backwards like this. We were seen as world leaders here. You know, one of the best things that happened to me was when all of this shit hit the fan, was to me, it was like, here we go again, we're going to have to fight again. And you know what was great was seeing all of these people coming out, protesting and supporting the kaupapa. Because when we were fighting the fight, there wasn't any of that. We sit in these rooms, we go to restaurants, cafes, we jump in buses and planes and all that, and we forget that advocates fought that fight in our communities to get some gains. Trying to get our community out there, trying to get the local marae, awahi kore, trying to get some research. And then when this repeal occurred, you saw the support. Thousands of people coming out, people writing submissions, and the media coverage. So the kaupapa is still an important kaupapa. In fact, it's shifted from just being merely in the background to being a taonga, in my view. People now see it as very precious, and it's not just the Māori kaupapa either.
So heartened by talking to colleagues about that it's not our first rodeo and we're going to get there eventually. I wish it was now, and I wish that we could be much further down the pathway, but it will come back.
Let's be driven by community aspiration, and I tell you, it doesn't matter who's in government, they can't rock that world. Yeah.
They repealed the Super Act, and you know, when you think about it, that's loss of life. You know, you equate that to people dying. You know, the mahi was there to save lives.
And I think that's what we do in this mahi. It's not about us. It's the health and well-being of our future generations.
So I find myself now in supportive of the National Tupeka Kore group, but more supportive of the fact that I want an independent voice. I don't want to have any government ties, you know, whether it's philanthropists, whether it's some donors or whatever. We need to get into a place of, you know, complete mana motuhake, so that we do not have to be answerable to any government provider, you know, whether it be Te Whatu or the Ministry of Health, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'd rather be part of, you know, a fully independent voice. So that's what I'm hopeful for.
So we continue to fight, we continue to resist, we continue to advocate against the industry. And where that leads us, hopefully, probably won't happen in 2025. As I say, if a miracle would have to happen, but we want to actually see a smoke-free generation.
Oh, I'm very hopeful. I'm sure it's going to happen. If it's not Aotearoa, it's going to be another country and we'll just fall in line. It's not a race, but you know, it would be nice to be first, and mainly because of the harm it's causing our people.
It's beautiful to watch it evolved, and to go to a 21st or an 18th of my mokos, my nephews or nieces, nobody smoking. That's huge. It's this huge, huge thing.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful. I don't. Governments don't last forever. That's why there's always hope. Kapai?
I was talking to Anaru Wā yesterday about the constant fight, the constant conversations we have with people who aren't us about our why. Because we are asked to convince them why it is we deserve to be saved. We are continuously asked, why is it that you are trying to argue with us about what's good for you? When my tūpuna have set the tone for what is good for me, for my girls, for my mokopuna, and for generations to come. And you have never asked me or our people what that looks like for us. Have a conversation, kōrero with us, and don't determine and define us. Because that was done generations before I even arrived on this earth.
So to let everybody know, my campaign against smoking ends when we achieve our target of getting down below 5%. But my campaign on vaping continues until we get rid of that shit as well. How's that?
Kia maumahara tōnu ngā tāngata kua mate mai te timatanga o te rapunga. Tihei Mauri ora.